Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the sale of the state liquor stores, it's been tried before, once under Governor Thornburg and a couple of times under Tom Ridge, or maybe I got that reversed, but both tried to sell the liquor stores, and then guess what? The state of Pennsylvania cities, all that and more. Pennsylvania politics in depth and in detail, and guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. All right, there's going to be a huge push by Governor-elect Tom Corbett to guess what? Sell the liquor stores. Have we heard that story before? And then the state of Pennsylvania cities, we have one of the mid-state mayors, Rick Gray from Lancaster City and Richard Schuettler from the Pennsylvania League of Cities. We're going to talk about city and the situations that they face. But first, Robert Swift is in the house. He's with Times-Shamrock Newspapers. All right, Robert, is this like a third round of talk about selling the liquor stores? Let's start with Thornburg and Ridge. What did they try to do with them?
It started, almost basically 30 years ago. Governor Thornburg made the first attempt, and basically they called it divesting the state stores to sell them. Governor Ridge then tried it, and he tried to tie it to raising money for stadium aid. The issues in the Thornburg era were more, it was in the wake of Reagan's election and a new federalism and cutting back the state bureaucracy. Both governors met with determined resistance of a coalition of, you could say, Bible Belt conservatives and sort of like, say, big city Democratic lawmakers interested in preserving the union jobs.
Sure. So you had unions, and I think Ridge faced it from MAD,
That was a factor that rose during the first Thornburg attempt. The drunk driving movement, I think, really had a big impact in stopping it the first time.
And before we get to the future, so we've had two efforts. We've had more than two because governors. Thornburg tried it not once but twice. Did I got that right? Yeah. And Ridge tried it once but not what?
He tried it. It was basically one effort with some modifications.
Okay. So here's the takeaway point. Two governors, Republicans, tried it in the past, didn't succeed. How hard did they try?
Thornburg really tried hard. I think Thornburg really made a determined effort, even towards the end of his time in office, the second time. I think Governor Ridge, it was more, it was not on the first priority item for him. It was the crime agenda that came up later. Right. So I think it was tied to this need for a stadium project.
All right, let's talk about it. Tom Corbett has talked about this now for some time. He said, we're going to do this. He's got huge majorities in both houses. Before we get into how that would happen, what do you think the prospects are for passage compared to Ridge and Thornburg?
I still think it's not going to be easy. It's a tough climb. It may be better now because of the $4 billion structural deficit that they're talking about, and that you take the tax hike option off the table or the fee hikes, you don't have a lot left.
Right.
And
Okay. Well, let's talk about it now. Mike Terzi, who's the Republican leader in the House, says if we sell the liquor stores, we get $2 billion.
That's what he says. Some people are challenging that estimate, mainly the food worker union, saying that that's based on an old Ridge estimate era that got discredited. So who knows? I mean, that's going to be one of the key points of this debate.
Now, there are over 600, do I got this right? Just a little more than 600 state stores, correct?
Right. And when these state stores, remember what they're scattered around the state. The LCB has a mandate to, serve the state population, even in some areas that may not support it commercially. They have to have some presence, and these state stores are very different. Some of them in the metro areas of Philly are quite sophisticated. In fact, they call them wine and spirit shops. In other parts of the state, near where there's a lot of dry communities, we still have a lot of dry municipalities.
For those of you out there, that means they don't sell alcohol in those municipalities, right?
That's correct, and there's still a lot of that in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So, all right, so breaking this down, Terzi and some Republicans, more Republicans, I think, want to do this than Democrats. Would you agree?
That's correct, yes.
$2 billion, plus you would reap money from the sales tax, a couple $100 million. We're not getting into the argument about that. So we're making a fiscal argument, correct?
Right.
Is that now? There will be huge pressure from the unions, especially, to stop this among the two other groups that you talked about. You got Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and you have social conservatives who don't want to see the expansion of alcohol.
That's right.
Because of attendant problems, not just alcohol, not just, you know, out on the roads, you know, and the danger that creates. Go ahead.
Yeah, the social problems, the same group that sort of mobilized Paul Clymer, anti-casino foe, has expressed qualms about getting into this again. He is a ranking Republican member in the House. So you have that group out there. You're going to have... in the Turzai plan, one issue that he wants to, you know, have a set number of licenses, more licenses than state stores. But still, the question is, well, you know, where exactly these stores going to be? Are the people who buy them going to have some choice of where they want to put their store?
So what if they want to move them a couple blocks or a couple? Hey, we
that
can't decide where to put 14 casinos, right? We're still battling over a couple
that
over
stuff.
14.
Exactly.
How are we going to do what? So 600 or 700?
That's part of what the.
Wow.
Also, there are other people who
way.
want to get in on this debate. The supermarkets have long wanted to be able to sell wine and beer in their stores, and they crop up.
Oh,
there's, I think, Senator Rafferty from Montgomery County launched a, quote, beer revolution last year to, you know, deal with the distributor and the, you know, the six-pack sales and that sort of thing. So that could be the bill could pick up a lot of, you know.
All right, before I let you go, is this going to be an early proposal and push in this administration? Do you think it will be part of the budget process?
I see it more as part of the budget process, but once again, this may not be, the revenue may not be there for the 2011-12 budget. I mean, even Turzai's plan talks about a phase-out of the state stores for two-year period.
I got it. All right, there you have it. Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock. Great update. All right, the status of the state of Pennsylvania cities. This is a couple of segments you don't want to miss. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Well, this is a couple of segments I'm calling the State of Pennsylvania Cities. Maybe it ought to be called the Plate of Pennsylvania Cities. Joining me is Rick Schuettler. He's sitting across from me. He's the Deputy Executive Director of the Pennsylvania League of Cities and the Mayor of the City of Lancaster, Rick Gray. Richard Gray, Rick Gray, Mayor Gray, the Honorable Rick Gray. All right, look, Mayor, let me start with you. Cities, quite frankly, across the country, I've read $5 billion in debt. Now, your city doesn't have $5 billion in debt. Talk about a couple of the problems that you face that you would rank very high on must solve, got to get done, your biggest worries.
Well, you know, the initial problem, of course, is a lack of resources to pay for our police, fire, public works, schools. On the other hand, providing additional money for municipalities at this point in Pennsylvania would be good money thrown after bad if there isn't some systemic change in the manner in which police and fire contracts are determined, in the manner in which pensions are paid for. We really need some systemic reform from Harrisburg.
And we're going to talk about, I want to get into some of the specifics of those. I know you folks have some ideas about that, right?
Well, we sure do.
You sure do. You have a lot of. What now, Rick, I mean, Lancaster, you're not the distressed cities. Rick, quickly, just give it, and then I'll ask him about where he fits into that. Distressed cities, what does that all mean?
Act 47, where the determination is made by the state, by the Department of Community and Economic Development, that your city meets certain distress factors and would be declared eligible for Act 47, be able to enter the program.
There are 20 of those in the state?
Correct.
Something like 20? Go ahead.
Yes.
Now, if you go to distressed, you get some, not money, but resources to help you plan and to get your way out of your fiscal situation. Is that, do I have that right?
That's correct. A coordinator will be named for the community, and then a plan will be put together. And there'll be some options potentially on taxing options, but there's also probably one of the biggest reasons, and the mayor alluded to that fact, is that when the collective bargaining agreements come open,
Right.
They must conform with the plan that has been put in place to bring the city out.
We'll get to now. Look, cities around you in deeper trouble than Lancaster. Reading has been Act 47. It seems forever, a long time, right? Harrisburg even in worse shape. What have you done in Lancaster that you're not?
Well, we had a reserve that we've used very prudently. We still have about $6 million in reserve. But in addition to that, our budget for the last 2 years has actually gone down. We spent less last year than we did the year before, and next year we're going to spend less than we spent this year.
More with less? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
more
I'm not so sure with more with less, because we also are down probably 15 police officers. There's another 2 positions being eliminated in the fire department for 2011. So we've consolidated and reduced as much as we can. You get to a certain point, though, that you can't do that anymore.
Now, I wanted another segment to get into the remedies. I know both of you have some ideas about what. But if you look across the state, all of the what we call the third-class cities, medium, small-sized cities, plus we got the big ones, you know, Pittsburgh, Philly, Allentown. Give us your assessment of where you think cities stand. Maybe Lancaster in a little better shape. Where does cities stand?
Well, I think that generally speaking, most cities are simply trying to make ends meet at this point. Their revenue is stagnant, but expenses continue to grow based on factors that are out of their control. You have mandatory collective bargaining, arbitration that will force cost upon a community that it possibly cannot afford. Certainly, some are in better shape than others for a variety of reasons, but generally speaking, what we're seeing is folks who are in a situation now where their expenses continue to grow, the revenues have been stagnant, and there's really no way out.
All right, we're going to run to a break. I want to ask you when we come back, before we get to some of these remedies about tax-exempt property. Every time when I talk to mayors and get into, I hear this all the time. Lots of tax-exempt properties. Other municipalities don't face that, and that could be, even though some of them do good things. I think you would agree.
Well, most of them do.
Most of them do good things, but the problem is tax-exempt is tax-exempt. Right. All right, the state of Pennsylvania cities. That and more following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're talking about the state of the PA cities. The host makes a mistake, this host. I said that Reading had been in Act 47 for a number of years. I was wrong. It's only been last year. That's why we have these guys. They're the experts. And then it's Scranton, I guess. Rick, is that right, that have been
Scranton's about 9 years when Mayor Doherty took over. They put their plan
Look,
together.
the mayor of Reading's working hard. We're going to give him credit for that, and I'm sure you guys would agree. All right, let's talk. Is tax-exempt property one of those overblown things, do you think, or is it?
No.
You're going to smile.
Far from overblown. The only tax that we can really adjust as municipalities is property taxes. That accounts for probably 40% of our revenue in the city of Lancaster. That said, we have probably, well, if you go by the status or the appraisals, it's about 28% of the city is tax exempt. Mm-hmm. If you look at it realistically, it's closer to a third, 35, 40%. You have, for example, the courthouse, the city or the county building, the prison, the youth intervention center.
Churches, schools.
Just the county government alone deprives the city of a huge amount of taxes.
Try to tax them. Is that going to work?
Well, I think it would be a good way to share revenue. I really do, because they're county facilities. When there's a fire, they call our fire department. Yeah. When there's an incident, they call our police department out to the prison to make the arrest and the prosecution. But past that, we have the churches, we have the social services, We have Franklin and Marshall
now,
College.
you watch what you're saying about Franklin and Marshall College, Mayor. Come on.
They make a great contribution to the community.
But your point is well made.
All these things do, but the problem is none of them provide sufficient revenue to pay for the services that we're required to pay for.
This is just not a, this is a problem for cities throughout the state, right?
Absolutely. For the very reasons that the mayor says. When you look at the business model that Mayor Gray is operating under, where you say, as he said, the only tax he can adjust is a property tax. Yeah. And it's his major source of revenue, along with earned income tax. But then you take one of those major sources, you throw 30% of it right out and say you can't collect on it.
Let's talk about another source, and then I'll come back. I'll ask the mayor to weigh in on this. Look, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia get a little extra bump on the sales tax. Am I right about that?
You are correct.
They don't pay to 6. I mean, the consumers don't pay when they purchase things. They pay 7 and 8. I think it's 7 in Pittsburgh. Am I right? Now 8 in Philly.
Correct.
Now, you want some options there. You'd like the legislature and the governor to allow cities to have a sales tax hike? Yes or no?
Yes.
What do you want out of this tax change?
We think a county option sales tax that would regionalize the tax base.
What does that mean?
Meaning that a sales tax would be collected at county level and dispersed back based on a formula to all the communities within that county, would help the Lancasters with moving off of that property tax and earned income tax base.
What do you like that idea?
Well, if it's a local option, I doubt if we'd have it in Lancaster. Because
what does that mean? That people would have to vote for it?
That means that the commissioners would have to vote for it. My guess would be it would never be enacted.
Because it would be shared, they would have a role in it. Is that it?
Because they'd be blamed for it, basically. It's the reason the General Assembly doesn't have enough guts to impose an additional 1% sales tax and say this is going to be revenue from municipalities.
1%.
The problem is, with something like that, let's say Lancaster got another $3 million, unless there's some systemic changes in the way things are done, 2-3 years from now would need another $3 million. It doesn't really solve the problem. Revenue in and of itself is important, but without some real changes, it's not going to solve the problem.
All right, we're going to run to a break. I tell you, we're getting a great update. We're getting into the details of some of the situations at Pennsylvania cities. We're going to look ahead and see in the final segment about where all this might go. Talking about bills, we're going to pay some now.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program, The State of the Pennsylvania Cities. We're going to look ahead in a minute. All right, Mayor Gray, let's talk. Sales tax may not be the only solution, right? You have.
Well, it isn't the only solution. What we need is a menu of possible taxes that we could impose on the local level to try to give some relief to property owners and to renters from the property tax. Over-reliance on the property tax is like taxing a savings account. Not the interest you earn on it, but how much money you have in the account. And to a certain point, it's okay, but it's gotten to the point now to try to fund police, fire, public works, schools, and county government on property taxes is just inoperable, and it just doesn't work.
Now, looking ahead, you know, with the new Corbett administration, I mean, it looks like an extraordinarily tough fiscal situation time, not just for the state. You lose your stimulus money that ends this year. So what's Rick's crystal ball?
Sure. I mean, we've always certainly asked for certain things regarding dollars from the state and what we think are commitments, but we're not, for the very things we're talking about in this task force report that we recently put together, Terry, are empowering us to helping us, help ourselves. One of the biggest areas that we've seen around us is pension reform. How do we control the cost of pensions in local government going forward? That's something the state could be very helpful with changing some of the statutes as we go forward. We think Act 111, which is the is the mandatory arbitration rule for
That's
public
in
safety.
collective bargaining.
Correct.
If the municipality unions can't agree, it goes to binding arbitration. Go ahead.
Create some standards around Act 111 that are based on the community's ability to pay for what an arbitrator is awarding. We think those kind of things, what the mayor is talking about in terms of systemic change, would go a long way to reducing the expense side, and then allowing that menu would make a lot of healthier communities.
You're shaking your head. You agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you, rather than just provide funds, that's not what we're looking for. And when I say we, I mean the people who live in the local municipalities. They could do things in Harrisburg that would relieve the burden on the local municipalities, make it more efficient, more economic to operate a local government without providing any funds to us. Just give us some change and give us the ability.
Yeah, how about mandates? We used to hear an awful lot about all these things that the federal government, state government says you must do. Maybe they start out paying a little, maybe they don't pay anything, and you end up having to. Is this something that's big on your agenda? Sure. I know both of you want to weigh in.
Well, some of us are really concerned that the way they're going to balance the state budget is tell the local municipalities, you do that now instead of us. And really, burden shifting like that is tax raising. Yeah. They'll leave it up to us at the local level to raise the taxes to perform the functions that the state previously performed. And we're going to watch that very closely. Because if they shift that burden like that, all it means is your property taxes are going up.
One of the things that I've noticed, I'm not picking on the cities because I think it's true elsewhere. When I drive through cities, wherever they are, I notice the roads, the infrastructure there definitely needs work. I mean,
you're on state roads when you drive through the city.
Of course, we're never on one of the mayors or some other. But you get the point. Oh, sure. I mean, but that does require money, and in this state, they're talking about. I mean, we've had people in here, $3-4 billion. We got to do something. Don't we have to do something about the roads and bridges? And go ahead.
Cities have had, because of the issues we're talking about and the amount of money and the percentage of, for instance, Lancaster's budget that goes to public safety personnel, therefore puts it in a tough position for capital funding for infrastructure, to be able to raise money and to maintain those things at the local level.
Go ahead.
65% of our budget is public safety. So we have a little left over. You know, it's interesting. In China, they spend 9% of their gross domestic product on infrastructure. In Europe, they spend 5%. In the United States, we spend 2.5%, and that's down from 3% 30 years ago.
All right. Well, look, I want to thank you guys for coming in. I think this has been a great update. Maybe Rick, we'll get you back, and as we move ahead, and the mayor, you're always welcome on a program to talk a little bit more about. We've not devoted, I think, enough time to urban problems on this program. We'll try to rectify that. All right. As always, thanks for watching, and stay well, and we'll see you next week.